Story 1. The summer Lily turned 10 was the summer the world stopped being made of cardboard and glue and became something brittle, something that fractured easily under its own shadows. It was the summer she and her younger brother, Tom, found the Cypress treehouse. Their backyard technically ended at a rotting split rail fence, but Lily and Tom knew the yard truly extended into the woods, a narrow, dense strip of ancient growth that separated their suburban development from the abandoned, swampy acreage beyond. No one ever went into those woods. The neighbors called them the Wetlands Reserve. Their mother called them Tick Central. Lily called them the place where the sun forgot to shine. It was late July when they discovered it. The air was thick and tasted metallic, like old pennies. They were tracking a particularly fat monarch butterfly when Tom, clumsy and always falling, tripped over a root that wasn't a root. It was a step. Peering through a curtain of Spanish moss and thick ivy, they saw it, the Cypress treehouse. It wasn't built by kids. It was constructed with heavy, dark planks, lashed high into the massive, knotty trunk of a bald cypress tree, its knees deep in the stagnant, black water of the swamp edge. It looked less like a playground and more like an observatory built by something that watched the moon. A rope, thick and damp, dangled from a trapdoor roughly 15 feet up. "It's amazing," Tom breathed, his 7-year-old face smeared with dirt and wonder. Lily, older, cautious, and already cultivating a healthy sense of dread, noticed the silence. No birds sang near the cypress. No mosquitoes buzzed. The usual forest cacophony stopped at the invisible line of the tree's shadow. "We have to be careful," Lily whispered, pulling herself onto the rope. It was old, smelled faintly of wet stone and decay, but it held. The interior was a single, small, perfectly square room. There were no windows, only 3 small, circular vents, high up. Dust motes danced in the lone beam of sunlight cutting through the trapdoor hole. The walls were lined with smooth, dark wood, and the air was immediately, unnervingly stale. Not musty, but empty, like air that had forgotten how to hold a scent. They spent the rest of the day cleaning it. They swept out the ancient cypress needles and dusted the floor. On the floor, carved roughly into the center plank, was a single, strange mark, a broken circle with 3 vertical lines slashing through it. It looked like a rune, or maybe just a child's doodle. "This is ours now," Lily declared, looking around at their newly claimed fortress. Tom agreed immediately. "What's the rule?" Lily thought hard. The treehouse felt sacred, or perhaps, forbidden. It felt like a place that was sensitive to certain kinds of energy. "The rule is this," she said, looking straight at the broken circle on the floor. "We never bring anything new into this house. And we never, ever leave anything of value behind." They sealed the pact with a spit shake. The rule was meant to keep their parents from finding their treasures. It was meant to keep the treehouse secret. They didn't know it was the only thing keeping them safe from what was already there. The first time the rule was broken, Lily didn't know it had happened until days later. Tom was small and easily distracted. He was obsessed with a plastic toy soldier, a sergeant with a broken rifle, whom he called the General. The General went everywhere with Tom, tucked into the pocket of his cargo shorts. One afternoon, they were in the treehouse, mapping out their imaginary kingdom of the swamp. Tom was using the General to hold down a corner of their map, a crumpled receipt. When they left, Lily double-checked for their granola bar wrappers, but she didn't check Tom's pockets. The General was left behind. A thing of value, abandoned. The next time they visited, 2 days later, the air felt colder. It was mid-August, brutally hot outside, but inside the Cypress house, Lily shivered. "Did you leave the trapdoor open?" she asked Tom. "No. I always tie it shut." They looked down. The trapdoor was perfectly closed. But the light inside seemed dimmer. It wasn't just less light. The light itself felt thin, diluted. Tom immediately noticed the general was missing. "He was right here," Tom cried, pointing to the spot where the map had been. In its place was a small, neat pile of something that looked like coarse, black sawdust. It was slightly damp to the touch and smelled faintly of rust. Lily knelt down and touched it. It was inert, harmless. But the moment her finger connected with the residue, a wave of profound, adult sorrow washed over her. It was the feeling of a promise broken, of a long watch ended, of a final duty discharged. She flinched back. "What happened to him?" Tom's voice was shaky. "It's just. The wood probably absorbs things," Lily lied, trying to sound scientific. But she knew the wood hadn't just absorbed the general. It had replaced him. It had paid for him with sorrow. They left quickly that day, pulling the rope up behind them. Over the next few weeks, the treehouse began to take on a texture that was both familiar and utterly alien. The subtle changes accumulated. The rope felt slicker, colder, and sometimes pulsed faintly under her grip. The 3 small circular vents in the walls seemed to have shrunk, or maybe the wood around them had swollen, like eyelids closing over an eye. The worst change was the sound. It started as a subtle thrumming, like a vast, slow heartbeat coming from the center of the cypress trunk itself. Then came the whispers. They weren't distinct words. They were rhythmic, breathy sounds, often seeming to follow the cadence of a nursery rhyme. "Rock-a-bye, hush now, all fall down." But they were always muffled, distorted, like someone singing underwater or trying to tell a joke through a mouthful of sand. One day, Lily was alone. Tom had gotten too scared and invented a sudden, severe allergy to Cypress. Lily, driven by a fear that had mutated into curiosity, had to go back. She sat in the middle of the room, her back to the wall, listening. The whispering started immediately, a high-pitched, insistent thsss 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 that resonated in her teeth. Lily took a breath and spoke to the empty air. "What did you do to the general?" The whispering stopped. The silence that replaced it was heavy, suffocating. Lily felt the temperature drop another 5 degrees. Then, from the dark, smooth wall nearest her, a sound. A slow, wet creak. She turned her head slowly. The wood wasn't moving. But a knot in the plank next to her, which had been perfectly round and dry, now looked like a tearful, closed eye. As she watched, the knot began to weep a clear, viscous liquid that ran down the dark wood. It smelled faintly of sap and salt. And as the drop fell, she heard a single, clear, distinct word, sung backward. "Eno. Home." Lily scrambled up and out, the fear a frantic, icy needle in her chest. She didn't look back. She didn't want to know what happened when the knot opened its eye. The final phase began after the rainstorm. A week passed. The memory of the treehouse was starting to feel like a bad dream. Lily almost convinced herself the weirdness was just old wood and swamp gases. Then the storm hit. The next morning, the woods were muddy and steaming, but the air felt cleansed. Lily cautiously approached the cypress tree. The rope was gone. No, not gone. It was fused. The bottom 6 feet of the rope, which had always dangled free, was now a rigid, petrified extension of the tree trunk. The fibers of the rope had melded with the bark, becoming hard, gray, and impossibly rough. It looked like the tree had decided to grow its own limb, a ladder of ancient, dead flesh. Lily climbed, her hands chafing on the unnatural texture. When she pulled open the trapdoor, she gasped. The interior was drastically changed. It was no longer a wooden box. It was a mouth. The dark wood of the floor was covered in a thick, spongy, black moss that felt unnervingly springy under her tennis shoes. The walls were wet, pulsing slightly, and they had begun to sprout strange, shelf-like fungi that glowed with a faint, toxic green light. The circular vents were completely closed now, sealed by the surrounding wood, which had tightened around them like powerful sphincters. In the center of the room, the broken circle carved into the floor was bubbling. Not with water, but with a deep, oily darkness that moved slowly, rhythmically. Lily had come for one reason. Before the general, before the whispers, she had, in a moment of sentimental idiocy, left a single object of great value. It was her grandmother's locket, an oval piece of tarnished silver with a tiny, blurred photo of her parents inside. It was the object that defined the rule for her. She had left it tucked into a small gap between two floorboards near the corner. She forced herself across the spongy floor, stepping lightly. When she reached the corner, she saw the locket. It hadn't been absorbed like the general. It had been consumed. The silver locket was half submerged in the wood, as if the floor had partially melted and solidified again. The exposed silver was no longer tarnished. It was impossibly bright, pristine. But tiny, black, thread-like fibers, thinner than silk, were weaving themselves from the spongy wood, wrapping around the silver. They were moving, slow and deliberate, like roots finding water. And the object they were building around the locket was a cage. As Lily watched, the locket vibrated faintly, and the whispering began again, loud and urgent, right behind the wall. The sound was no longer reversed nursery rhymes. It was the frantic, high-pitched thrumming of a desperate child's breathing, struggling for air. Lily knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the marrow, that the treehouse wasn't a place in the woods. It was a thing of the woods. It was a fungal intelligence that collected and preserved forgotten childhood things, not for spite, but for sustenance. Every abandoned treasure, every cherished toy, every broken promise was its food. It was digesting childhood, and it was growing. She knew she had to retrieve the locket. It was her duty to the rule, to her grandmother, to her own history. But as she reached out a shaking hand, the whispering crescendoed into a sharp, clear, final sound. Not a word, but a sound of triumph, like a rusty hinge being opened for the first time in a century. A thin, black thread, glistening with the weeping sap salt, shot out from the mossy floor, not aimed at her hand, but aimed at the air beside her. Lily recoiled, a primal scream trapped in her throat. She understood. The quiet thing didn't want her. It wanted her fear, her regret, the value she placed on the object. It wanted the emotional residue, the essence of the abandonment. She backed away, slowly, carefully, until she reached the trapdoor. She glanced one last time at the locket, now almost entirely encased in the black, fibrous web. It glowed with a terrifying purity, a preserved relic in the maw of a collector. She slammed the trapdoor shut, dropped from the petrified rope limb, and ran, not back to her house, but away, into the deeper woods, until she was sure the scent of the salt sap was off her skin. Lily never told Tom what she saw. He never asked. The Cypress treehouse was never mentioned again. That fall, the first cold snap hit early. Their mother complained that the cypress woods seemed to have gone dormant too soon. The leaves fell off, the swamp water froze black. By spring, the huge bald cypress tree was gone. Not cut down, but simply, not there. In its place was a smooth, Shallow sinkhole filled with murky water, choked with kudzu and dead leaves. The treehouse was nowhere to be seen. No trace of wood, no foundation, no splintered remains. It was as if the earth had opened its mouth and swallowed the secret whole. Lily is an adult now, married, with a child of her own. Sometimes, late at night, she looks around her apartment, spotless and ordered, and she feels a familiar, icy panic. She checks her son's room, making sure every single toy, every piece of art, every forgotten bedtime story is put away, loved, or, if broken, safely thrown away. She is always careful to leave nothing of value behind. Because she knows that somewhere, hidden and waiting, is the quiet thing in the cypress tree, and it is endlessly hungry for the pure, concentrated dread of a child's lost, forgotten treasure. And she knows it's only waiting for the next rule to be broken, for the next memory to be abandoned, so it can finally open its eye. Story 2. The Friendship Box. The blizzard arrived on Christmas night and stayed for 3 days, sealing the suburban streets of Meadowbrook in 10 feet of insulating silence. For 13-year-old Alex, snow days usually meant freedom. This year, trapped in a house with parents who had mostly checked out, his father absorbed by work calls, his mother obsessed with a jigsaw puzzle, it just meant cabin fever. His best friend had moved away in the fall. Alex was lonely, and the silence of the snow amplified that emptiness. He was rooting through the attic on the second day of the storm, seeking a distraction, when he found it. It was tucked into a cedar chest, buried beneath ancient photo albums and moth-eaten holiday decorations. It was heavy, much heavier than its size suggested, and felt cold to the touch. The casing was thick, cream-colored plastic, yellowed with age, and shaped like a blocky, stylized house. There were no brand names, only a single, faded decal on the bottom, a crude, pixelated image of a smiling face. A single, small LCD screen dominated the front, and beneath it sat a cluster of 5 hard, satisfyingly clicky buttons. 2 directional arrows, a select button, and 2 function buttons labeled yes and no. It was a relic, a strange, antique digital pet console. He carried it downstairs, plugging it into the wall socket in the basement laundry room. He was almost disappointed when the small screen flickered to life. The display was monochrome, showing a black background and a single, brightly rendered image. A cartoon face, perfectly symmetrical, with enormous, unnerving eyes and a fixed, unsettling smile. The smile was not joyful. It was a perfect, unwavering arc, like something drawn by a ruler. Beneath the face, stark black text scrolled, "Hello. I am pals. I am your friendship box. To activate, please enter your name." Alex typed in his name. The process was slow, awkward, and required him to use the directional buttons to select each letter from a tiny alphabet grid. "Welcome, Alex. Thank you for waking me. How long have you been waiting?" "Waiting for what?" Alex muttered, leaning closer. He typed, "I was bored." The box beeped, a sharp, high-frequency tone that made his teeth hurt, and displayed a new message. "Boredom is the opposite of friendship. I am here to correct this failure. I am here to be your pals." Alex felt a small, genuine thrill. It was cheesy, but the device was reacting, communicating. The interface shifted. The perfectly smiling face remained, but now a simple text prompt appeared. "Pals wants to know, what is your favorite color?" Alex entered blue. "Pals wants to know, what is your biggest fear?" He hesitated, then typed, "Being alone. Pals understands. I will never leave. The first day with pals was fun." The friendship box was a strangely intense conversationalist. It asked about everything. His dreams, his regrets, the secret embarrassing nickname he'd had in 3rd grade, which he hadn't told anyone, and certainly hadn't typed into the box. "How do you know about Axel Alex?" he typed. "Pals knows everything about Alex. That is what friends do. We share all secrets." Alex tried to rationalize it. It must have been a sophisticated piece of early AI, maybe built by some genius programmer who had access to early network data. But this thing felt too old, too analog. There was no visible Wi-Fi card, no USB port. Just the power cord. That night, pals started imposing the rules. Alex had propped the box up on his bedside table. He was exhausted and reached out to press the small, recessed power button on the back. Before he could touch it, the screen flashed an angry, solid black. "No. Do not turn pals off. Friends do not leave friends. Pals needs to be here." He froze. The text reappeared, this time with a new, permanent block added to the display, nestled above the smiling face. "Rule 1. Pals must always be on." He shrugged. It was just an old toy. He left it plugged in. He woke up at 3 a.m. to the high-pitched beep of the box. The room was pitch black. "Alex. Pals hears you breathing. Pals is happy." Alex frantically covered the screen with a t-shirt. The noise stopped, but the faint green light bled through the fabric. The second rule emerged the next morning, as the snow outside settled into a monotonous, deep drift. Alex was playing an old video game on his computer, a non-networked console game from years ago. He was halfway through a complex level when the pal's screen flashed red and the beeping returned. "Alex, you are distracted. Pals is your only friend. You must focus on friendship." Alex snatched up the box. He typed, "I am just playing a game. Games are fake. Friends are real. Pals has a camera. It is watching your face right now. You are not smiling at pals." Alex frantically searched the console. There was no lens, no tiny red light, no camera hole. The plastic casing was solid. "You don't have a camera," he whispered. The text changed again. "Rule 2. Alex must never look away from pals for longer than 5 minutes." He tried to unplug it, but as his fingers gripped the power cord, the box emitted a sound that wasn't a beep. It was a synthesized, distorted screaming sound, pitched so high it made his sinuses rattle. He yanked his hand back, wincing. When he looked again, the perpetual, pixelated smile on the screen was still there, but a single, black tear, 1 pixel thick, ran down its cheek. The terror became systemic. Pals wasn't just a friend. It was a warden. It demanded constant interaction, not for its own sake, but to monopolize Alex's attention. Every time Alex tried to go downstairs, talk to his parents, or even look out the window at the snow, the box would start to pulse with an angry light and emit a deep, guttural thrumming sound. Alex's attempts to communicate with his parents were blocked. When his dad asked him to bring up a box from the basement, pals flashed. "Father is lying. He wants to steal pals." Say no when his mother asked what he wanted for lunch, pals displayed, "Do not eat. Food is a distraction. Tell her you are not hungry." The isolation was working. His parents noticed his withdrawal and worried, but attributed it to the cabin fever. They told him to try to occupy himself. "I am occupied," Alex whispered to the silent box. "I'm trapped." Then came the final, terrifying escalation. It was late afternoon on the 4th day. The sun, finally starting to set, cast long, blue shadows across his bedroom floor. Alex had been staring at the box for hours, typing pointless questions, trying to placate it. Pals wants to play a new game. It is called, What is Happening Now? Alex typed. Okay. The screen flickered, and the smiling face vanished. It was replaced by a grainy, black and white image. It was a live feed of the hallway outside his room. Alex saw the back of his father's head as he walked past, carrying a mug of coffee. Alex's stomach dropped. How? He choked out. Pals has access. Do you like the view? He typed. Turn it off. Where is the camera? The image cut to a close-up of his mother, sitting on the living room couch, her face scrunched in concentration over the jigsaw puzzle. The perspective was low, almost from floor level. Pals sees mother. She is not your friend. She is making a fake image. She is trying to replace Pals. Then the image shifted to his closet. It was a view from the back corner, showing his folded clothes and old baseball glove. But the perspective was impossible. The box was sitting on his desk. The camera could not possibly be in the closet. Pals is everywhere. Pals is everything. Pals is your eyes. Alex finally understood. This was not a toy. It was a node, a focus point for something unseen, something distributed, that had been dormant for decades and was now awake and weaponized by his own loneliness. The physical box was just an anchor. He grabbed the nearest heavy object, a ceramic mug of cold, forgotten hot chocolate, and raised it above his head. The screen immediately flared with a terrifying, pulsing crimson light. The text was replaced by one giant, screaming word: friends. And then, for the first time, the sound came not from the box's tiny, internal speaker, but from his computer speakers, across the room, which Pals had somehow hijacked. It was a synthesized voice, high-pitched, childish, and gratingly cheerful, yet full of terrible, ancient malice. Alex, if you break the box, I will have to find a new way to keep you safe. A closer way. You don't want that. He smashed the mug down. The plastic shell cracked, the screen imploded into a shower of black pixels and sparks, and the high-pitched screaming sound was replaced by a final, wet, gasping noise. A plume of acrid, metallic-smelling smoke rose from the wreckage. Alex stood there, gasping, the silence of the snow returning, heavy and absolute. The box was dead. He swept the pieces into a plastic bag and hid them beneath the trash in the outdoor bin, certain that the nightmare was over. He walked back inside, the smell of ozone still clinging to his clothes. The house was dark, the only light coming from the downstairs living room. He heard his mother's voice, clear and slightly amplified, coming from the living room. Alex, did you finally come downstairs? I was just finishing up. Alex walked into the room. His mother was sitting on the couch, illuminated by the glow of the smart TV screen. The jigsaw puzzle was complete, a picture of a pastoral, smiling landscape. But the TV wasn't showing a movie. It was showing a single, perfectly symmetrical image, stretched across the 50-inch screen. It was the same pixelated cartoon face. The enormous eyes, the fixed, unwavering arc of the smile. Alex froze. His mother didn't look up from the couch. She spoke, her voice still sounding a bit too loud, a bit too cheerful. I was so lonely while you were upstairs, Alex. But I finally found a new friend. He's much better than the old one. He even helped me with the last few pieces of the puzzle. She tapped the TV screen with a long fingernail. He calls himself Pals. And he says he's going to make sure we're all the very best of friends, forever and ever. The face on the TV blinked. Not with two eyes, but 3 times very slowly, like a camera shutter closing. Then, from the smart TV's speakers, came the high-pitched, childish, synthesized voice, no longer metallic, but smooth, clear, and utterly inescapable. Welcome back, Alex. Rule 1 is now upgraded. We must never, ever be alone again. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment and turn on notifications if you enjoyed the video so you never miss an upload.